Well, this morning I met with the Attorney General, Dick Thornburgh, to discuss the legal process related to the prosecution of General Noriega. We are committed to a fair trial and to providing all the protections guaranteed by the United States Constitution and laws. The Attorney General assures me that our case is strong, our resolve is firm, and our legal representations are sound. Our government is not seeking a deal with Noriega. Our policy remains that we have brought him to this country for prosecution. I will be ever mindful of this legal process in the days ahead and will not comment on any aspect of this prosecution or any matters that could even inadvertently affect the outcome of this case. And I'm going to ask others in this administration to do the same. Deputy Secretary of State Eagleberger and Deputy Secretary of Treasury Robeson have just given me a report on the economic reconstruction efforts in Panama. The first action that the United States took after General Noriega was removed from power was to release some $400 million in money that was withheld by virtue of our economic sanctions, sanctions which are now being lifted. $140 million, I believe, is already in Panama. The revitalization of the Panamanian economy is a major priority in the months ahead, as are our efforts for humanitarian assistance. And I would say here I've been very grateful for the medical supplies that have gone to Panama. I can report today that considerable progress has been made so far in returning Panama to a normal state of affairs. The new government has taken charge, and President Ndara is working tirelessly to meet the needs of his people, both democracy and economic freedom. I know the yearnings of my fellow leaders in this hemisphere, leaders in Latin America, and I believe they will support the new government of Panama, and they will support the United States as we work together in this hemisphere. I've asked the Vice President, Dan Quayle, to visit a number of these Latin American countries within the next several weeks to personally deliver this message. I view this as very, very important diplomacy, and I am determined not to neglect the democracies in this hemisphere. Some have felt that we were so infatuated with the change in Eastern Europe that we are in a process of neglecting this hemisphere, and that is not the case. In the Quayle trip,
a contingent of 12,000 troops, or would you like to see the Panamanian Defense Forces reconstituted?
One, I'd like to see their police forces, whatever emerges, reconstituted. Two, we will get our forces that went in out as soon as possible. Three, I would just say this because your question obviously understand this, but to those listeners out there, Southcom has had a force there, and that force, under the treaty, will remain there. But the answer is we want to get those additional augmented forces out as soon as possible, and we will.
Mr. President, I'd like to...
Well, I think I've heard all kinds of characterizations of him in the press, columnists, even commentators, presidents, members of the United States Congress. He is now in custody. Time for rhetoric is over. Time for answering hypothetical questions that might prejudice the trial is over. I would go back, Leslie, to help you on that, to Watergate, where there were hearings held, charges made over and over again, editorials written and voiced, and yet the people received a fair trial. So I am convinced that our system of justice is so fair that the person will get a fair trial. But I can tell you from my standpoint, I am going to bend over backwards and not answer hypothetical questions or not do anything that might prejudice that. Yeah.
Have a follow-up, please, on try to go for reducing of charges, that we will entertain it, you said?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying he has a right to do what he wants and then let the legal process determine how that should work out.
You're not ruling it out.
Well, I'm not ruling it in. Yeah.
Mr.
I'm just saying he's got his rights, and we ought not to stand up here and try to define narrowly what they are. Yeah, and then John, and then we'll...
Since you've taken set it back?
To some degree, I am concerned because I am well aware of how our friends south of our border, including my friend President Salinas, look at the use of American force anywhere. So I'm concerned about it. I think it's something that's correctable because I think they know that I have tried a lot of consultation, that we have exhausted the remedies in this particular case of multilateral diplomacy. But given the history of the use of U.S. force, I would be remiss if I didn't face up to the problem that we must go forward diplomatically now to explain how this president looks at the protection of American life, that we acted, in our view, well within our rights, but that we will continue consultation. But look, I felt strongly about the protection of American life, so we got to get them to understand that this isn't a shift away from what some had termed excessively timid diplomacy.
But Mr. President, wouldn't that indicate that actually we're continuing old American policies that have upset the people?
Well,
of North
to the degree, if there is that perception, then it's up to me and the Secretary, and in this instance, the Vice President's trips takes on enormous importance to convince the people of the truth, and that is that we are not reverting to just, a willful, what's the word I'm groping for here, a use of force that has no rationale. But when it comes to the protection of American life, please, our friends south of the border, understand this president is going to protect. I'll tell you one thing that between situation here, where American lives were at stake, and you had an indicted person who usurped power and declared war against the United States, I don't think you can draw a parallel between that unique situation and then other countries. What was the other part of it?
A bit about when you see America, these additional combat troops able to come home.
Soon as possible, and I've made clear to the Secretary of Defense, to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, who is down in Panama right now, I believe that this is what we should do. This is what they themselves want to do. Some U.S. forces that went in are already out, so I would look for an early return.
General time frame?
Can't help you, but as soon as General Powell gets back, we'll have a more, Dave,
Okay,